So very good afternoon to one and all, and good morning to my Croatian friends, especially Professor Nino and Professor Goran Bekic, and also there are some friends from the Iraq and Nepal and South Korea also, sir. Myself is Nilesh Sharma. I'm working as an assistant professor in the SCOST Jammu. On behalf of SCOST Jammu and the Association of Mastitis, I would like to heartily welcome to Professor J.P. Sharma, sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, SCOST Jammu. Sir, thank you very much for accepting our request for holding this webinar and sparing your valuable time. Sir, you are again welcome, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome to Professor A.K. Srivastava, sir, Honorable Member, ESRB, and President, Association of Mastitis. Sir, you are really a driving force behind this association and this webinar as well, sir. I know, sir, you are very busy, but you spare some time for us. Thank you so much, sir, and you are again welcome, sir. I also welcome Professor A.K. Gehlot, sir. He is the former Vice Chancellor of Rajwas, Bikaner. Sir, really we are very happy to see you, sir. Sir, thank you so much for accepting our really a request at very short time. So thank you very much. I hope your words will be really inspiring for us. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And I also would like to welcome to Professor S.K. Methi, sir. And he is the professor and head of the clinics, Veterinary College, Durg. And also he is the vice president of Association of Mastitis. So you are also welcome, sir. I heartily welcome now to my speaker for today's program, Professor Nino. You are most welcome, and he is really a very good scientist. He is a very good clinician, and he is really my best friend. And he is very much familiar with us. I mean, Indians, as you have already heard. He has already been here in India in Srivastava conference. So I hope we will enjoy with him. I also welcome to all the participants and senior members who are here. I again heartily welcome to all the participants who really spared their valuable time to register for this event, and finally they are here today. Sir, I would like to explain just in two lines about this association, sir. Association of Mastitis, it was just came in existence in 2019 in January. Sir, it was our dream to bring together all the people who are directly or indirectly associated with the mastitis or milk quality. Sir, as you know, mastitis is a serious challenge, serious concern for veterinarians, for researchers, for scientists, for farmers, and even for consumers. Because if the mastitis, ultimately we are drinking some low quality milk. So it was the final our mission to focus on prevention and control strategy of mastitis. Because the treatment of mastitis is really challenging for us, not only in India, worldwide, sir. So now I would like to request Professor J.P. Sharma, sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, SCOST Jammu, for his opening remarks.
4 बजे वो है। Honorable Dr. A.K. Srivastava sir, member of Agriculture Scientist Recruitment Board and President of Association of Mastitis, and my elder brother, he's my elder brother, and in a way, he's my mentor also. Interacting with him at this platform is an honor for me. Sir, your presence in this seminar, it is your program, but you made us privileged. I always enjoy your talk, your interaction. On behalf of the university, I welcome you, sir. Dr. Nilesh, who is the organizer and also General Secretary of the association. I congratulate you, Dr. Saab, and other members, Dr. Nilesh Sandhuji, Pavan Kumarji, and Dr. Sushil Kumar. They are part of the organization, and I congratulate them. The main speaker of today's this program, Professor Nino, I would like to express my gratitude and sincere thanks to be with us, and your speech will really benefit large number of participants who are joining this important program. I have heard a lot about Professor A.K. Gaulab when he was in Bikaner through my brother and through my friends. So today I am with you in this important program. I welcome you, sir. You all who are participating in this program are more wiser than me on this topic. But I have seen this problem in my village, in my family, how the animals are suffering from this important disease. In today's times, if I say, I heard the lecture of Dr. A.K. Srivastava Sahab at one platform, how he highlighted the importance of this sector. And he said in times to come, maybe animal husbandry may be the alternative to agriculture. And this time is coming because the per capita land availability is declining day by day. 85% of the farmers are either small or marginal. And to your surprise, 23% of the farmers are having only 200 square meter of land. Then what kind of agriculture we can talk? What kind of farming system, rice, wheat, sugarcane, we cannot prescribe it. It will be difficult to have 2 times of meal with that kind of arrangement. Sir, I have visited some of the villages here. It is your university. You were here for a long time. I have visited some border areas near Susetgarh. There is one farmer. He is rearing 24 animals and 200 square meter of land. And daily his milk sale is 15,000 rupees. If we take on an average 30% profit, then he is earning daily 4,500 rupees net income from 200 square meter of land. And the extra income he is getting from vermicomposting and through biogas, it is additional. There is another farmer which I visited, Mr. Khajuria. He is rearing some 50 animals. His per day sale is 25,000 rupees. And he is collecting this milk from other farmers. So total sale per day is 1,25,000 rupees. And his rates are three category. For cow, it is 40 rupees a liter. For buffalo, it is 50 rupees a liter. And for desi cow, it is 70 rupees a liter. And then he has started making animal feed. And now he has started milk ATM. So the kind of enterprises people are creating and giving job employment to others and creating income for themselves is possible through this animal sector. And the government and under the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, they have allotted some 13,000 crores rupees for animal husbandry infrastructure and another 13,500 crores for controlling animal diseases. And this fishery sector is another important area where the government has announced under Atmanirbhar Bharat 20,000 crores rupees for promotion of fishery. So that is the kind of importance of this sector. And then about this disease, I am told that the use of antibiotics in large scale in mastitis significantly contributed in increased incidence of antibiotic resistance. If this resistance goes on, then it will be a human hazard also. And in times to come, the consumption will increase to the level, then we will not be having antibiotic this thing to treat our animals. And I am told that around some 24.6 million pounds of antimicrobial are used for non-therapeutic purpose in animal farming. In comparison to this, compared with just 3 million pound used for human medicine. So you can imagine how much of this amount in terms of money is being spent, and how much of this human health it is going to affect. And this disease is also affecting the production or quality of milk and animal health. So this is such a big important issue on which all the people of national and international reputed are participating in this area. The non-judicious and rampant use of antibiotics for mastitis management without following mandatory withdrawal period resulted in presence of these antibiotic residue in milk as well as animal tissues. It decreases the quality of milk and inhibits beneficial lactobacillus bacteria in milk, which decreases the natural fermentation process during preparation of curd, cheese, butter, etc. The consumption of this milk in milk product causes development of resistance to microorganisms, allergy and hypersensitivity reactions, carcinogenicity and mutagenic effect, disruption of normal intestinal microflora, the normal function of vital system such as endocrine, nervous system, and immune and reproductive system. So we can see what is the importance of this topic which we are deliberating. Thus, in the need of time, it is a need of the time to devise a holistic approach and proper management of mastitis and elevating the menace of antibiotic resistance in dairy animals. I congratulate the team for organizing and taking the timely initiative to organize this webinar on this important topics, and I am sure all the listeners, all the participants will be definitely benefited from the long and enriching experience of the speakers like Professor A.K. Srivastav Saab, who has worked in different capacities in different organizations, including our Jammu University, NDRI. He was there for 2 terms as the director, and I have seen how the university and the NDRI uh, progressed under his dynamic leadership. Sir, with these words, I congratulate the organizers and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this important event. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Sir, as you mentioned some farmers, Mr. Khajuria, he is also attending this program, sir. He is very advanced farmer, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for your comment, sir. So now I would like to request to our speaker, Professor Nino. So first of all, I would like to introduce him briefly. Professor Nino is a doctor of veterinary medicine from University of Zagreb, Croatia, and he completed his graduate in 2002. Really, he has very vast experience in the management of mastitis control and dry-cow protocols. Throughout his scientific research career, Dr. Nino has participated as a researcher in various national, domestic, and international scientific research projects. He has published more than 100 papers in domestic or international, and he has really participated in many conferences. Most of conferences, they were related with the other health, hard health, and reproduction. Here, I would like to also mention that in India, mastitis is mainly dealt by the medicine people. What in other country, the mastitis means it is a part of the reproductive organ. So reproduction people from gynecology and obstetrics, usually they handle the mastitis cases. So basically, Dr. Nino is also from the gynecology and obstetrics. So Dr. Nino is a member of various scientific bodies, such as Croatian Veterinary Association, the European Association of Reproduction of Domestic Animals, Croatian Small Animal Veterinary Section, and European Federation of Animal Sciences. He has many domestic and international awards in his credit. So now I would like to request Professor Nino, please deliver your lecture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will start with my presentation. Well, I'm new in Google Meet, so just a second. Okay. Okay, and this one. Is it okay?
Yeah. Please, full screen.
Okay. So, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you for great introduction to this lecture. Thank you all members that were in organization of this webinar and other webinars. First of all, I want to thank my very best Indian friend, Professor Nelish, and his team for huge efforts in organizing a lot of lectures and webinars in last couple of months. So since we have been in lockdown in recent months due to this coronavirus, I just decided to prepare a lecture on the responsible use of antibiotics in prevention and treatment of mastitis. So first of all, on this slide you can see outline of this presentation, but I want to present you master of penicillin, Sir Alexander Fleming, and his famous sentence: "The time will come when penicillin can be bought by anyone in the shops. Then there is a danger that ignorant man can underdosage himself by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug and make them resistant." This is happening, what he said 60 years ago. So I'm coming from Europe, and I will briefly present legislation of and action plan for how to fight against antimicrobial resistance. So the European Commission has developed his own 5-year action plan to tackle antimicrobial resistance. First, they launched in 2011. So their action plan is based on holistic approach in line with One Health perspective. So all sectors should participate and cover all aspects of antimicrobial resistance. 4 years later, in 2015, the World Health Assembly endorsed a global action plan to tackle antimicrobial resistance, including antibiotic resistance. And they try to achieve this goal through 5 strategic objectives. So one of the most important is to improve awareness and understanding of antimicrobial resistance. So antimicrobials, antibiotics are not candies, so we should use it when we have to use it. So first of all, we should reduce the incidence of infection and try to optimize the use of antimicrobial agents. As well, we should invest in new medicines, diagnostic tools, vaccines, and other interventions. So I just briefly try to search scientific basis like PubMed, and I found one recent article that was one of the most of articles from Indian authors. But in this article, I found that Indian Ministry of Health and Animal Welfare published the National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance in April 2017. So you actually have action plan in India. I know that all of you know for that initiative. So after 4 years, in 2018, 2015, the European Commission requested a joint scientific opinions from European Medical Agency and the European Food Safety Authority on measures to reduce the need of use antimicrobial agents. And they recommend specific measures centered on a theme: reduce, replace, and rethink. So they just try to discuss on that every country should set national targets for reducing antimicrobial consumption, should reduce consumption of antimicrobials in animals to the minimal necessary, and if possible replace them with alternative measures. We should use critically important antimicrobials for human medicine in animals only as a last resort, and try to rethink to implement farming practices that prevent the introduction and spread of disease. So briefly, in a couple of slides, our legislations and action plan in last 10 years. So as we heard before, in a couple of minutes before, we had problem with antimicrobial resistance.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Actually, I think someone has disturbed, so your PPT is not displaying here. Please, can you again go for?
Sorry?
Yeah, you are not, it's not sharing of your display, your PPT.
Not showing my PPT?
A PPT is being
showing, please.
No, PPT is being seen, but it is not on full screen. So kindly make on full screen.
Okay, a second.
There is some problem, I think, yes.
Well, now?
Yeah, it is in a box only. It is not on full screen.
Not full screen?
Sir, kindly stop presenting and then present now again, sir.
Okay, like this. And as you can see, so is it on full screen?
Obrnuto ti je, znači, čuješ me? Čuješ me?
Ovako?
Ne, sad ti je na onom dijelu gdje tvoja glava bi trebala biti, tamo je prezentacija.
Kako je to moguće?
Nemam pojma, neko te bio isključio sa dijeljenja.
Okay.
Sad trebaš obrnuti.
Okay, we'll try to... Okay. Well, I will... second.
No,
second.
I think you should again start presentation.
Okay.
I have removed the presentation. Kindly present now again, sir.
Okay. This is second. Okay. Now presentation.
Da.
Yeah.
Better?
To je to, da.
Okay. So should I return to previous slides or no? I think that everything is clear. Nelish?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can continue on this slide. Okay. So nowadays about 700,000 people die each year from infections from multi-drug resistant bacteria. So scientists around the world predict that 10 million people in underdeveloped countries will die in 2015 due to antimicrobial resistance. So as I said in previous slides, many countries have launched various initiatives to prevent antimicrobial resistance. So as you can see, in Germany, in a period of 4 years, they reduced antibiotic consumption for 53%, and in Netherlands, they started earlier. So from 2009 to 2015, in dairy industry, they reduced antibiotic consumption for 47%. So especially on the most problematic period, in dairy production is dry cow period. In that period, they at the beginning they use dry cow therapy in 94% of cows, and they decrease it to 61% of cows 5 years later. So what should we do? We should change the current practice of non-selective use of antibiotics, especially in drying off dairy cows, and prolonged use of antibiotics in clinical and also in subclinical mastitis. So we all know that they promoted this for decades. So European antimicrobial advice ad hoc group, they change categorization of antibiotics that are used in animals. So we have a category A labeled as avoid. In this category, we have antibiotics currently not authorized for veterinary use, and they cannot be used in food-producing animals. Then they should only be used to pets, small animals, under exceptional circumstances. So these groups is maybe I can say completely forbidden. So category B, labeled as restrict, refers to quinolones, third and fourth generation cephalosporins. But we all know that many local antibiotics that we use for intramammary applications contain quinolones, especially of third and fourth generations. But with this categorization, we should use that in restriction. So we try to find alternatives to antibiotics in this group. So in category C, they labeled this category as caution. So that covers antibiotics for which alternatives for humans generally exist. So in this group, we should use antibiotics when we don't have suitable antibiotics in category D. So category D is category of antibiotics labeled as prudence. So that covers antibiotics that may be used in animals in a prudent manner. So group treatment should be restricted to some situations where individual treatment is not feasible. So for all antibiotics in all categories, we should avoid unnecessary use or rely long treatment periods at underdosing. Group treatment, as I said, should be restricted to some other situations where individual treatment is not feasible. So just briefly, a table, new categorization. As you can see here, in category B, we have cephalosporins third and fourth generation. I believe that you know that a lot of intramammary local antibiotics were categorized in this group. And in this veterinary group, we have all the medicines that have alternatives for use in human medicines. So mastitis, we all know that we have major problem in dairy industry with mastitis, and it brings significant economic losses. The use of antibiotics in food animals has been a growing concern over the last decades, with increasing consumer awareness regarding this point and its effects on antimicrobial resistance. So antimicrobial resistance for now is not a problem on dairy farm, but rational application of antibiotic is preferable. So antibiotics are most commonly used to control mastitis. And according to consumer research company from Germany, they published that in 2015, only 27% of intramammary antibiotics were applied for clinical mastitis therapy, whereas 73% were used on dry cow therapy. So what strategy will be for reduce antibiotics in dairy farm? We should focus on reducing the incidence of infections, especially we should control new infections and reduce the use of antibiotics in animal treatment, trying to find some alternative preparations. So we know that mastitis control is a process that requires continuous monitoring and improvement. So existing monitoring programs are already at a high level, but they can be additionally improved to reduce the use of antibiotics. So the aim of all preventive measures is to decrease new infections during lactations and dry period. In these early lactations, first 100 days is pretty important to cover and to monitor and to prevent new infections. Also in the dry period, for first 15 to 30 days after drying off, we have 6% more new infection rates in these 2 or 3 first weeks of drying period, especially at the beginning of lactation, as you can see in this period, and lately in or a couple of days before parturition and in a couple of days after parturition, in that freshening period, we have animals that are pretty much susceptible for new intramammary infections and clinical mastitis, and a lot of clinical mastitis in early lactation is due to infections in dry period with environmental pathogens. So what should we do? In previous slide, we focused to prevention, but in some cases, we should treat animals that have mastitis. So the main objective of antibiotic mastitis therapy is to eliminate the causing pathogen from the cow, or at least from the quarter of the udder. So treatment success can be quantified by determination of different cure rates, such as clinical cure, bacteriological cure, and overall cure rate. Antibiotic treatment decision should be based on clinical grade of mastitis, as well as identification of causing pathogen of mastitis. So we should evidence-based mastitis therapy approach consider and combine with multiple criteria regarding host and pathogens. So we should try to answer to the following questions. So the first question is the individual cow therapy is appropriate for that animal? So a substantial percentage of all clinical cases are recurrences. So according to recent studies, in up to half of all clinical mastitis or cows have experienced previous cases. So several animal-specific factors are generally considered to influence bacteriological cure. First is age of the animal. So older animals have lower chances of cure than younger animals. Mastitis history. So clinical mastitis during current and previous lactations indicates lower chances of cure. So if we have the animal that was had I know, couple of clinical mastitis in previous lactation, it will have lower chances for cure in this lactation. So current somatic cells, the high somatic cells, we have the lower the chance of cure, and also the animal history during the previous months. So we should consider about the age, mastitis history, and current somatic cell count. So the second question is does the mastitis pathogen require antibiotics? So, as I said, evidence-based mastitis therapy implies the identification of causing pathogen of mastitis before antibiotic treatment is initiated. We know that this is actually impossible to do, but because the time span between milk sampling and the arrival of microbiological sensitivity test result, and also when we include transportation, it will pass more than 48 or 72 hours. So at that time, treatment has been started or even concluded. But in these cases, generating up to 50% of needless, or we will have inappropriate treatments in many cows. So number of clinical cases caused by coliform bacteria is about 20 to 35%. So we also know that many of that clinical mastitis caused by coliform bacteria, we actually do not treat locally with antibiotics. So a high proportion of mastitis milk samples result in negative bacteriological growth with a rate from 20 to 45%, and these animals will not benefit from antibiotic treatment. So we have many fields where we can reduce antibiotic consumption. Also, in some microorganisms like mycoplasma, prototica, fungi, antibiotics are not effective. So pathogen-dependent avoidance of intramammary antibiotic treatment of clinical mastitis enables reduction in antimicrobial usage for about 40 to 50%. So on this picture, we can see that in some we have some regional differences in the distribution of pathogens cultured from quotas affected with clinical mastitis. So we can see that in some region we have no growth in 22, almost 50% of tested samples. So in this group, it is just difficult to justify antibiotic treatment. So second question. Sorry. So if we have a causing pathogen of mastitis, gram-positive, local antibiotic treatment is required. So therefore, pathogen classification as gram-positive, gram-negative, and no-grow serves as sufficient but necessary basis for that, as we said, evidence-based treatment decision. So in these cases, it will be good to use rapid on-farm tests, which will allow identifications of pathogen groups. We will have only information if the pathogen is gram-positive or gram-negative or no-grow. It will be enough for us to make a decision what antibiotic we will use, and these results will get in 12 to 24 hours. So in Europe, European Commission's guidelines recommend prudent use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicine, and they suggest the use of rapid diagnostic tests for identification of causing pathogen of mastitis. So does the mastitis grade require local or systemic or additional therapy? It will depend on the grade of mastitis and type of mastitis. So as you can see, we have subclinical and clinical mastitis. So our intramammary infections present, if they present in clinical mastitis, we have a mild clinical mastitis that is categorized as grade 1. We have only abnormal milk in moderate grade 2 clinical mastitis. We have abnormal milk and other inflammation. And in severe clinical mastitis, we have a systemic illness or cow. So that can be affected from bacteremia and septicemia. So in these cases, we should use aggressively antibiotics and additional therapy. But for all these grades, initial systemic application of non-steroid anti-inflammatory drug is recommended in all cases of clinical mastitis. So we have always question for subclinical mastitis to treat or not to treat. So treatment of subclinical mastitis during lactation should be avoided due to low bacteriological cure rate and high new infection rates, with only few exceptions, like infections with some fast transmitting pathogens, for example, Streptococcus agalactiae. But we have so many questions why not to treat subclinical mastitis, because we want to return the cow to previous production. We have to decrease somatic cell count. We want to prevent new infections between the cows and prevent clinical mastitis. Also, we want to prevent some economical losses. But if we want to make decision to treat or not to treat, we should have this in mind. We treat cows with subclinical mastitis cases where it is likely to reach complete recovery. So, first of all, when we have low somatic cells and we have young animal in first or second lactation, then when intramammary infection is recent, so not to treat old chronic inframammary infections. And when we don't have quarters infected with Staphylococcus aureus, we should cull from production cows with subclinical mastitis where it is not likely to reach cure rate. So in cases with high somatic cells, old animals with chronic intramammary infections, and when we have infected more than one quarter with Staphylococcus aureus, we should recommend culling of this animal. I know that it's really difficult when you have production a couple of animals, like 3 or 4 or 5 animals. It is difficult to recommend culling of one animal because it's, I don't know, 20-25% of all animals. But you should suggest it will be better, and quality of milk will be better. So decision of treatment of subclinical mastitis is based on information of cows, so on cow level, on mastitis pathogen, and whenever we can to get bacteriology, we will recommend based on bacteriology because we want responsible use of antibiotics. So clinical mastitis causing pathogens predominantly gram-positive bacteria. The most prevalent is Staphylococcus aureus, then Streptococcus tuberis. It is, we have some regional differences, but they are most prevalent in my country. So decision will be based on a treatment plan on farm. So whenever we can perform a decision on bacteriology and sensitivity test, and every farm in my country has that treatment plan for mastitis. So if we talk about in general about clinical mastitis, mild and moderate grades of clinical mastitis do not necessarily require systemic antibiotic treatment, and local antimicrobial therapy is recommended also, as I said, depending on causing pathogen. So additional systemic antibiotic therapy does not significantly increase the cure rates, and however, when we have severe clinical mastitis that was categorized as grade 3, when we have a systemic illness of a cow, and in these cases we should treat the animal with systemic antimicrobial treatment, also with local antibiotics, and give fluid therapy. So as I said before, in all cases of mastitis, clinical mastitis, it will be beneficial to applicate immediately non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, so it will be beneficial. Okay, we should act fast and long enough. As I said, we can combine systemic and local antibiotic therapy, and also all recommendations should be based on bacteriology when we can get this information, all because of responsible use of antibiotics. So, is the standard number of antibiotic doses appropriate? So, in exceptional cases, an extended duration of intramammary antibiotic treatment increases the probability of bacteriological cure, and some authors recommend elongated therapy for 5 days in the cases of initial intramammary infections with Streptococcus uberis. Some field studies show that clinical mastitis cases caused by Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus uberis benefit from extended intramammary treatment regarding bacteriological cure. But I'm not sure. Some recommendations from farm industry, they just suggest 3 doses of local antibiotics that will applicate in every teat. But these 3 applications now in my country are prolonged to 3 days. So except 3 applications, we have 6 applications for regular treatment of clinical mastitis from grade 1 to grade 2. Okay, which antibiotic substances can be recommended? So the prescription, in general, the prescription and dispensation of antimicrobials must be justified by veterinary diagnosis in accordance with current scientific knowledge. A narrow spectrum antimicrobials should always be the first choice. And the use of broad spectrum antimicrobials and antimicrobial combinations should be avoided. We know that we have that antibiotic bombs with prednisolone for clinical mastitis treatment, but we should use it with care. So routine prophylaxis, that's the focus, must be avoided, and prophylaxis should be reserved for some exceptional case-specific indications. So, as I said, focus will be on routine prophylaxis. So we know that routine DCT for all cows was promoted for more than 30 years. And theory and practice of conventional mastitis control for more than last 30 years has been based on 5-point plan. So historically, it was targeted against contagious mastitis, which was a predominant problem in this time. But now we have problem but I talk about European countries. We don't have a predominantly problem with contagious pathogens that cause mastitis. We have problem with environmental pathogens. So therefore, this 5-point plan did not cover environmental management or pre-milking teat disinfections. So the incidence of new intramammary infection is highest during dry periods, especially in the first 2 or 3 weeks. So to prevent the udder from acquiring new intramammary infections in dry period, in many countries, and it was promoted for more than 30 years, we use the blanket dry cow therapy and intramammary infusion of long-acting antibiotics at the end of lactation is integral part of 5-point plan, and it was adopted around the world on dairy farms. So focus is to change this, and we'll argue later how to do it. So blanket dry cow therapy, we know that the goal of DCT is to reduce prevalence of intramammary infections by eliminating existing infections and drying off, and preventing new infections of the udder from occurring in that dry period. So dry cow products are mainly formulated for gram-positive cocci while providing no or very little protection against gram-negative bacteria. So in some countries, DCT is only applied for curative reasons because preventive antibiotic use in some Nordic countries like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, in some European countries like Netherlands, Belgium, it's prohibited. So they do not use antibiotics for prevention in dry period. So in this article, the objective of this study is to compare the efficacy of 6 different dry cow intramammary antimicrobial products for treatment and prevention of mastitis. So overall, we can see here overall quota prevalence of intramammary infections during all was almost 3%, and after culling it was 22%. So 22%, and the quota cure rate during dry period was almost 84%. The rate of new infections during dry period was 70.4%, and with a significant difference between the prevalence of new quarter infections with major and minor pathogens. So here we can see that blanket dry cow therapy is really effective against it has a high cure rate against all infections from previous lactations. So cure rate is from 70 to 90%, and it prevents from new infections. So we have only 17 new infections. So I think that it is time to make some change, but it's not easy. So prudent use of antimicrobials in dairy industry requires evaluation of blanket DCT. So in Netherlands, for instance, a study from 19th showed that not applying DCT leads to an acceptable high incidence rate of clinical mastitis, but this study is from 90s, and this was confirmed in meta-analysis from other authors in article published 10 years ago. But in some countries, specifically in Scandinavia, they use selective DCT for last 20 years, and it was part of the national mastitis control programs for a long time, and they have pretty good results. So in this article, we have evaluation of selective DCT following on-farm culture. We talked about that on-farm culture before. So they have 729 cows from 16 commercial dairy hertz. Only they had low bulk tank somatic cell count, less than 250,000 cells in a milliliter. Animals were randomly assigned to receive either blanket DCT or selected DCT based on Petri film. So they're divided into two groups, blanket DCT and selected DCT. All cows were infused with long-active antibiotics and internal teeth sealer, and selected DCT divided into two groups, animals that have culture positive test infused with long-acting antibiotics and internal teeth sealer, and animals that have culture negative test, they only infused internal teeth sealer. So prevalence of intraluminal infections within first 18 days after calving, in quarters receiving blanket DCT was 15.8% and selective DCT was 14%. So in conclusion of this study, we have that selected DCT based on results obtained on farm culture system is the same level of success with respect to blanket DCT. So, and did not affect the risk of clinical mastitis in first 120 days of the subsequent lactation. Okay, so I believe that you heard, and maybe some of you use external and internal teeth sealers. What are external teeth sealer? It's a teeth protection dip that seals teeth canal for 4 to 14 days. And another sealer is internal teeth sealer that it's a non-antibiotic paste that acts as physical barrier against mastitis causing bacteria. So it is infused, that tube of that internal sealer, that non-antibiotic paste, was infused in each teeth at the dry off, and it mimics the function of cow's natural keratin plaque for that period. But you should infuse it carefully in a teeth, and at the beginning of new lactation, you should sweep aggressively this paste from the teeth 10 to 12 times per quarter for 3 to 4 days. Okay, so for now, in practice, there is no clear and unique selection criteria for selective dry cow therapy. Experts in the field of mastitis from different European countries research they try to find some selection criteria, and we have a couple of them. So we have a selection criteria based on curd level. So parameter will be about 10 somatic cell count. Then on cow level, we should take in account individual somatic cell count, clinical mastitis history, parity, and also some quarter level. So for now, we have a couple of models applied in practice. Some use cow level and threshold of somatic cell. That somatic cell will be below 200,000 cells in milliliter. Then herd level, bulk tank somatic cell count below 250,000 cells in milliliter. Some of them recommend Petri-Farm, combining Petri-Farm on farm test, and that test has sensitivity 85%, specificity 73%. So the other model is in primiparous cows, they use threshold, individual threshold somatic cell count below 150 cells milliliter, and multiparous below 250 milliliters cells in milliliters. So on the last milk recording before drying off. So we have various models, but there is no unique selection criteria. Well, in this table is shown opinion of 13 experts in the field of mastitis from different European countries. So they were asked to present their dry cow therapy approaches. So as these data reflect only opinions, not hard data, they indicate that despite mounting pressure of governments to reduce the use of antibiotics throughout Europe, dry cow therapy is still a blanket approach. Selective DCT is applied. It basically is always at the cow level and based on mastitis history of cow. In countries in which selective DCT is applied at the national level, such as I said, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, that Nordic countries, selection criteria based on mastitis history seems to be replaced by more practical and easily applicable methods, such as somatic cell count at dry off. So, in conclusion, antibiotic resistance is not currently a problem on dairy farms for now, but what we want rational application in the future. So antibiotics are commonly used for mastitis control, mostly in dry period. So we should focus on dry period and try to find a way to reduce it in this period because, as I said in previous slides, we treat only 25% of infections of infected animals in that dry period with blanket dry cow therapy. And about 75% of animals we treat and they are not infected. So we should find a model how to discover these infected animals and try to find in combination with that economics. Okay, so selected dry cow therapy criteria we have on a cow level, and most of the countries use that criteria. We should use also herd level when we can get bacteriology and clinical mastitis history. So the prescription and dispensation of antimicrobials always must be justified by veterinary diagnosis, and it should be in accordance with current scientific knowledge. So I started and I'll finish with Master of Penicillin with Sir Alexander Fleming. So I will read this sentence again. I like this sentence. The towel cow and penicillin can be bought by anyone in the shops. Then there is a danger that ignorant man can underdosage himself by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug and make them resistant. So, as Professor Nelish said, I have very good friends in India, especially my friend Professor Nelish. So I'll show you some memories from our Congress and Congress in India, our trip to India, and also a strong connection to India is my son. He is a goalkeeper in the field hockey, and I heard that this sport is really popular in your country. So every day I'm with you with my son. Thank you very much. I'm here, and you can ask me questions. So thank you very much for attention.
Thank you, Professor Nino. Thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Thank you, Professor Nelish, for effort to organize this webinar, and a lot of them.
Yeah, it was very important, for you, because you are always busy. So really, we are thankful for sparing your time for us. So now I would like to Dr. Sindhu. So if you have any questions, please, you can put your questions from the participants. If there is no question, then please tell me.
Very good afternoon to all of you. There is one question about therapeutical alternatives to antibiotics for mastitis control. Just only one question. And another one that is a routine question, that is treatment of chronic mastitis. These two questions have been asked by the audience.
About chronic mastitis?
One is chronic mastitis, second is therapeutical alternatives to antibiotics for mastitis.
Well, I don't know if I understand your question, but you're talking me about antibiotics in chronic mastitis?
Yeah, I will explain it. I will explain you. Actually, he's asking first question: what are the alternatives of antibiotic therapy in mastitis?
Okay.
Alternatives of antibiotics. Second question: what you will suggest in case of chronic mastitis, relapsing, recurring of mastitis, or chronic mastitis? You understand?
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So, alternative preparations, we try to investigate. I don't know if you heard for propolis. For propolis, we had a huge project a couple of years ago, and we find that propolis is a good alternative for mastitis treatment, because there is no carenza, and also it's not antibiotic. Also, you can vaccinate animals, so it will not cover you completely on mastitis, but clinical signs will be mild. So when also you have some immunity preparations like immune that will affect the immune system of a cow, and immune system will be stronger in a freshening period when they are immunocompromised, because they have a lot of hormonal changes before parturition, and when they cow also, they have a huge production of milk. So in this period, they are susceptible to infection. So you should take care about prevention. And when you have treatment, in many cases you can't avoid antibiotics. But if you can use, I don't know, penicillins, not cephalosporins of third and fourth generation. So we don't have much of alternatives, but experts around the world trying to find some, I don't know, non-antibiotic substances that will affect and cure mastitis without application of antibiotics. And in chronic mastitis, second questions, antibiotic of choice, we know that penicillins, cephalosporins do not pass barrier and do not pass tissue of other, and you should use, it's not first choice, but in clinical mastitis, but in chronic clinical mastitis, it should be the first choice, like quinolones, because they will only, if they will affect, the only antibiotics will be quinolones and similar antibiotics. I know that many of our farmers and veterinarians use combinations of cephalosporins, and they applicate it in locally in other, and they give systemical quinolones, and so they try to cure chronic mastitis. But in many papers, I know that in your country, cow is animal that has a special position in a production, and it's really difficult to cull the animal from the production. But when you take in account money, economic calculations, it's not practical, like it's not economical to cure that chronic mastitis. But in your country, I would suggest to use systemic antibiotics, mainly quinolones and similar, in combinations with non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs. I think that it will be good combination. So I don't know what is your experience or of Professor Neles, but that's experience from my country and European countries.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor Nino. Professor Nino, only one more question. It's not direct related to antibiotics. I'm sorry for that. Actually, just one of scientists, he want to know, do you have practice of endoscopic examination of teeth or mastitis? Are you practicing some endoscopy in your clinic?
Teeth endoscopy.
Endoscope.
Endoscope. Okay. Yeah. Well, when I start with my career and faculty, my supervisor, I think that you will have in a couple of days opportunity to meet him, Goran Bačić. We got pretty thin endoscope. It was teeth endoscope, and brand is Karl Storz. It was about, I think, 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter. So we try to make endoscopy of a teeth. Well, you can see a lot of changes, tissue changes, but I think that you can do a lot. You can remove some I know, some strictures, some tissue defects or something. We do that actually blindly without endoscope, because when you are at the farm, it's unpractical, because it's really a sensitive instrument. So you don't have the proper place how to restrain that animal. So you can use it at faculties, institutes, only for scientific purposes, I think. Well, when I was in Karnal, I think 4 years ago, I saw one poster presentation of your colleague. He made pretty nice ultrasound pictures. He made it through a fluid, through, I know it was, water or alcohol or something, and he got pretty nice pictures, images of that teeth, and without endoscope, it is practical to see if you have any defects in that teeth canal. Yeah, so it is interesting, but I think for scientific purposes, because in a field, it's, I think, unpractical.
Yeah, unpractical, right. Yeah. So, Professor, so thank you so much for your really so excellent your presentation. So Now I would like to request to Professor A.K. Gehlot sir, former Vice Chancellor of Rajwa, for his scientific comments. Gehlot sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Nilesh. It's a really a pleasure to attend this international webinar on antibiotic resistance immunes in management of mastitis. This has been organized by the Association of Mastitis. My regards to Professor J.P. Sharma, Sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Scouts Jammu. Actually, I was also a member of University Council of Scouts Jammu when N.N. Vora Sahab was Governor of J&K State. My regards to Professor A.K. Srivastava sir. His presence always encourages us. Then the Vice President, Dr. S.K. Methi, Dr. Professor Ashok Kumar is also, I have seen him, President VIPM. And very specifically, Professor Nino Mekesik, if I am pronouncing your name correctly.
Excellent.
You mentioned about, and you have shown your connections with India. So my request will be, please keep them up and keep them alive.
Yes, before Corona, Professor Nelish invited me to be a lecturer in one conference. I was very busy, and he said, "You will come to India after all of this mess due coronavirus." So I think that I will have opportunity to come to India again and to meet some of you.
Okay. Professor Nino, in your presentation, it was really wonderful presentation, and compliments to you for enlightening everybody on mastitis as well as its management. You have mentioned in your initial slides India's action plan, but I think it is yet to come on ground as a control program. And we are all worried about the other day, Professor Srivastava sir has also organized a webinar on antimicrobial resistance. So it's good that many countries like Germany, Netherlands, we have given example, they reduced the use of antibiotic up to 2015. I think by now the data must be more than 50%. You have already shown 47 and 53%. And then very good example about the EU categorization of antibiotic use in animals, particularly the categories of avoid, restrict, caution, prudence. And then you very rightly mentioned about the focus should be on prevention of mastitis. That is the key for reducing use of antibiotics in mastitis. And identification of cause and see the sensitivity. That was the another stress point during your presentation, and you have very beautifully placed and discussed the questions that whether is the individual cow therapy worthy. Although the same question may not be applicable with in Indian context, because we cannot cull the cows and send to slaughterhouses.
Yeah,
so
I know
it is
that.
very difficult. And then again, the even cows and buffaloes are both are with most of the these animals, dairy animals, they are with small holders. So they will not like to part away. There are very few large herds. Large herds means more than 50. What I mean, and very few, you can count on fingers, which are in thousands in the country. So this is another two questions. Does the pathogen require antibiotics, or and the third one, local and or systemic and or additional therapy is required. So all these three questions you have discussed very nicely, and every practicing treating physician should put these questions in his or her mind before treating the case of mastitis. Now, another important point you have said, which is applicable directly in Indian context, that mastitis treatment should be planned. The plan for mastitis treatment should be made on the farm. Rather, I would put it like that it should be for the farm. So I will be mentioning some of my own experience also, that when you plan control of mastitis on a farm, it's more likely that you get a lot of success. And then instead of blanket dry cow therapy, you have suggested selective dry cow therapy. So this will be a a good step, and uh, it is our observations in India is that blanket dry cow therapy is less needed in indigenous cattle and even in buffaloes also. So we never feel a need to treat 100% dry cows and buffaloes with dry cow therapy. So your suggestion to have selective dry cow therapy, it will be very well taken in Indian context. And then on farm culture, this is a very good suggestion, and I think my viewpoint will be that at least those farms which are with the institutional farms, which we call, they can have this facility of on-farm culture, to get a result within 12 to 24 hours. And a very new thing, at least I am not aware of, external and internal teat sealers. And I am not aware that in India anywhere this practice is there, but it must be a new development in the control of mastitis. Now, with these, remarks, and again, once again, thanking you for your very nice presentation, I will like to go back to the first question, that what are therapeutic alternatives? You have answered that question also very well. But in India, ethno veterinary medicine, it has been very well tried by National Dairy Development Board, NDDB. They have started way back in 2014 in collaboration with Sabarkantha Milk Union as the incubation center to test the concept. And now it has been implemented as a mastitis control popularization project in 25 milk unions covering about more than 1500 dairy cooperative societies across 9 states and benefiting over 1 lakh farmers. Now, the important thing with this use of ethno-veterinary medicine is that they are propagating it not only for mastitis, but for more than 14 other ailments also. So, and a very high success rate in mastitis control, more than 80% and above. They have reported the success rate of controlling mastitis. And this concept has also been recognized lately by International Dairy Federation as well as Indian Dairy Association also. And this use of ethno-veterinary medicine in management of dairy animal diseases has become more significant in the current scenario because the Food Safety Regulator of India, FSSAI, has come out with stringent regulations on permissible limits of antibiotic or drug residues in the milk and milk products. So this use of ethno-veterinary medicine, it is expected that and it has been found and reported also, published reports are there by 2-3 groups of scientists, that it has resulted in reduced use of drugs and antibiotics, and thereby help decrease in incidence of antimicrobial resistance as well as residues. So these, this is one field in which India is marching ahead, and we are laying very much stress on use of ethno-veterinary medicine. Another very good, even my experience I will narrate, improved management and hygiene. we have seen in COVID-19 situation when due to sanitation and social distancing, etc., the incidence of infectious disease in human beings and use of antimicrobials has reduced drastically. And I think the same will happen if we implement the hygienic measures and some managemental practices to control mastitis. Even when I was a farm in charge way back in 84 to 89, mastitis, when I joined, mastitis was a very big problem. About one third of the cows, they were suffering with mastitis. And I implemented simply the hygienic and sanitation measures and early detection of mastitis. And within 1 year, the farm was with zero mastitis. So I think it can be controlled by these hygienic methods as well as early detection and then early treatment. Uh, Therefore, as has been shown by during your presentation, several attendees, they have put on chat that there should be a mastitis control program. You must be aware that India has taken a big leap forward recently to introduce a control program for foot and mouth disease, brucellosis, and PPR, and several other infectious diseases are in pipeline. But mastitis, I think it requires a good score because of the fact that another day Professor Srivastav Saab, he presented that the total losses caused by mastitis alone in the country, they are nearing about 50,000 crore rupees. And I have come across one publication where around 10% of milk production loss is estimated in India. If we count the value of 10% of milk, it comes to around 1 lakh crore rupees. So this is the huge loss which this single disease is causing in India. And that means it qualifies for a massive control program throughout the country. Now, frequently questions are being asked about what are the alternatives. So I have mentioned ethno-veterinary medicines, but then very encouraging research results are there regarding antibiotics in or antimicrobials in human beings. Say, for example, in emergence of bacteriophages. So bacteriophages, this is a separate class of virus-like particles which secretes and endolysins, and then they control the bacterial infection. Then lot of antimicrobial peptides, they are in pipeline. And I was referring that there is a software developed in the world that collection of antimicrobial peptides, and so far 45 families, and the total antimicrobial peptides, they have been identified around 1400. So these things along with probiotics, these new things, bacteriophages, your endolysins, then antimicrobial proteins and probiotics, they gives us a ray of hope that soon we can have an adjunct therapy or an alternative therapy to antimicrobials. And that way, when its use will be reduced, naturally the resistance will also be reduced and the residues will also be reduced. So with these remarks, I once again thanks the organizers for giving me this chance, and thank on behalf of all the participants to Professor Nino for your excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words, sir. And I think Professor Nino, I think he was also there. So, sir, he has explained all the facts about mastitis in India. Actually, as you know, in India, herbal medicine, ethnopharmacology, that's a lot of scope, and they are giving good results. So, in future, we can use all these as a alternative therapy, right? And people now, they are slowly they are getting very aware about hygienic practices, because now they are getting detailed knowledge that how we can manage this deadly disease. So they are improving the hygienical practices and they are controlling the mastitis. Hopefully, we will get some good results in coming years also. So anyway, sir, thank you so much, sir, again. So now I would like to request to esteemed Professor A.K. Srivastava, sir, and the Honorable Member of ESRB and the President of Association of Mastitis for his closing remarks. Sir, please, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nilesh. Well, friends, very good evening to all of you. Honorable Vice Chancellor of SCOST Jammu, Dr. J.P. Sharma ji, who is my good friend, like my brother. My other elder brother, Dr. A.K. Gehlot, former Vice Chancellor of Raju Bas, the lead speaker of today's program, Dr. Nino. My friends, Dr. Nilesh, Dr. Sandhu, all the office bearer of this association and participants, very good evening to all of you. Well, friends, at the outset, I express my gratitude, thanks to Dr. Nino for giving a wonderful talk. I appreciate your lecture. That was full of information, well presented, well arranged, and I enjoyed your lecture. So thank you very much. And after listening your lecture, I don't think that I have any comments to offer on your lecture. It is a very well planned and complete lecture, which I can say like this one. But certainly, friends, as far as mastitis is concerned in India, there is bigger problem, and in future, this problem is going to increase. The reason is that we started cross-breeding programs for enhancing the milk production, and we reached to at #1 in the world in milk production. Today, we are producing around 21% of the total world milk, 188 million ton of the milk. This is the one aspect. But another aspects that we found that there is a direct correlation between high-yielding animal and mastitis. As productivity of animal increases, the incidence of mastitis is increasing. That has been established, at least in Indian scenario, we found that one. There is less incidence of mastitis in local Indian breeds who are producing less milk, but there is very high incidence of mastitis in crossbred animal producing high milk. #1. #2, in future, I can see that country will be requiring more and more milk. So cross-breeding program will continue. And if cross-breeding program will continue, high-yielding animal we will be getting, then there will be more and more incidence of mastitis also. So what I'm trying to say that we have to come out with a solution, because this issue is not going to be sorted out in few years. It will continue process on one hand. On the other hand, AMR, antimicrobial resistance, yes, this is a bigger challenge. And as Dr. Gehlot says that we had organized one day a brainstorming session involving all the think tank on the AMR, antimicrobial resistance, and it came out that food animals, animal producing food, are mainly responsible for AMR. And in that, dairy animals are mainly responsible. And in dairy animals, treatment of mastitis is certainly most important, and it is creating problem. On the other hand, I was collecting the data that in livestock sector, we are using more antibiotic than in human medicine. #1, more antibiotic is being used. And #2, out of 41 veterinary approved antibiotics, 31 are those antibiotics which are also very essential for human medicine. So if AMR is developed against 41 antibiotics being used in animal practices, then automatically AMR will be developed again 33, 34 antibiotics will be developing the AMR line. More and more MR we are expecting in future, because now large dairy farms are supposed to come, We are in need of more and more animal food, and we have observed, a study has been seen that our large livestock farms are violating more antibiotic use than small dairy farmers. And more problem of AMR is because of large commercial dairy farm, not because of small holder dairy farms. Number one. As far as loss due to mastitis is concerned, Dr. Galut has said enormous loss. Around 60 billion Indian rupees we are losing, and out of that 62, 63 or 60 billion Indian rupees, 44 or 45 are only because of the subclinical mastitis. So clinical mastitis, it's easy to treat, we can diagnose, we can treat, but subclinical is bigger problem that we have to address. So AMR is one issue that we have to see that how we can address while using the antibiotic in the treatment of mastitis. One research I will like to share with Dr. Nino and Professor A.K. Gehlot. When I was doing active research, we did a lot of experimentation, and we found that parenteral administration of antibiotics in the treatment of clinical mastitis is giving better result than only intramammary infusion. So our protocol was that evacuate the udder, make it free from milk, give first infusion by intramammary route, and then subsequent maintain the minimum inhibitory concentration by parenteral route. So it is more effective, as well as there is less problem of the residue in the milk, and certainly if there is a less residue, then it will create less AMR issues. As Dr. Gehlot said that hygienic maintain. In Karnal, we took an initiative and we adopted few villages. We went to the farmers, small farmers, and we taught only one lesson, that while milking, because they do by hand, they are not using machine milking because they are small farmer, poor farmers. So just we said that before going for milking, kindly wash your hand, wash the udder before touching the udder, number one. And more important, after milking, don't allow animal to sit for half an hour on the ground, because we all know that it is a managemental disease, and if it is a 40-liter, 30-liter milk producing animal, when you take out 40 liter of the milk, lot of calcium, phosphorus you are going to take out, animal feel weak and immediately wants to sit. Teat canal is open, lot of bacteria, viruses, all these things, they will enter and disease will take place. And you will not believe, Dr. Nino, that this simple intervention has reduced a significant cases of mastitis in the villages. So this we found, and I will like through this seminar that more and more veterinarians should take care that, okay, treatment, diagnosis and all these things is one issue, but how to manage at poor farmer's door, that is the more important. And as far as non-antibiotic use, non-antibiotic treatment of the mastitis, yes, that is the need of the day. Unfortunately, in India, we know that there are different system of medicine. In addition to existing allopathic medicine, we are having Ayurvedic and all these things, and in that we are having lot many herbs, lot many means plant extracts having antibacterial activity. We also recommend that it should be used for the treatment, for the management of the mastitis. As far as means culling of the animal is concerned, or as far as the advantage of individual animal treatment is concerned, we cannot even discuss in this in our perspective, because if it is a single animal suffering with mastitis, even then we have to go for treatment, because we cannot curl it out, we cannot slaughter it. So that will be one issue, that we will be going for even single animal mastitis treatment, but certainly with the non-antibiotic. AMR is a bigger problem, and that we have to address, friends. There is not much to offer after the very good lecture of Dr. Nino, and after the very good remarks of Dr. A.K. Gehlot. But yes, friends, along with treatment of the mastitis, AMR is the biggest issue, and we found that AMU, antimicrobial use, is directly correlated with the AMR. As the antimicrobial use is increasing, the incidences of AMR is increasing. Number one. Number two, non-therapeutic use of antibiotics in livestock practices as a food additive to enhance the production, that is causing great concern of the AMR. And third important point, means which worried us initially, means when new antibiotic came, fluoroquinolones was never recommended for livestock use. It was only one fluoroquinolone, that is the enrofloxacin. But later on, all fluoroquinolones, pfloxacin, ciprofloxacin, this all came in the veterinary use. That is the one concern. And more important is, for the last 10 years, there is no antibiotic in the pipeline, which we expect that in couple of years it will be coming in the market. That is the more concern for us, that if antibiotics develops resistance for the microorganisms, then we don't have new antibiotics. And the reason is that we don't have any new antibiotics in this one. And we are going to reach in the post-antibiotic era if new antibiotic is not discovered. I give one example, simple example, that when we say that there is a dwindling trends in antibiotic production, then you will be surprised to know that 14 classes of antibiotics were introduced in market from 1935 to 1968. In just 30 years, 14 classes of new antibiotics were introduced. And from 1968 to 2020, only 5 antibiotics have been introduced in the market. 5 group of antibiotics have been introduced in the market. So there is a dwindling case of the antibiotics use, number one. And there is no antibiotics at present in the pipeline which can save us. That's why we are more worried that if AMR will be established and all these things, then there is no antibiotics. Not only that, if we see the approval of new antibiotics globally, then there also there is a dwindling trends. Means in 2008 and 9, one antibiotics was approved. After 2009, not a single antibiotic was approved globally, either in human practice or in animal practice. That is the cause of the concern, friends. So if I want to summarize my closing remarks, yes, I can say that there is a direct correlation between milk production and incidence of the mastitis. Subclinical mastitis is a bigger problem than clinical mastitis. We are using more and more antibiotics in livestock than in human health. Out of 41 antibiotics approved for in veterinary practices, 31 or 32 are most important for the human practices also, because our organism is same. So we have to use these antibiotics. Non-antibiotic use has to be promoted for the management of the mastitis. Hygienic practice, educating to the farmers, training to the farmers to control the mastitis is area where we should give more emphasis. But let us be prepared that AMR, mastitis, both are going to continue with us, and we have to, adjust ourselves. The best way is that how best we can use antibiotics in the treatment of mastitis, so there is no problem of AMR. And second, in what way we can enhance the newer group of antibiotics for research and for development. Only then we will be sustaining the higher milk production in this country as well as the global level milk production. Thank you very much, Dr. Nino, for wonderful talk. I enjoyed, and I as a president of Association of Mastitis, I express my very sincere thanks and gratitude to Professor J.P. Sharma ji, Honorable Vice Chancellor of ISKCOSH Jammu, and Professor A.K. Gahlot, my good friends and former Vice Chancellor of Rajubas, for spending with us it is going to be 2 hours with us. Thank you very much for your participation, and we will continue such type of activity. This is not the issue which should be talked once in a year or once in a 2 year. This is the issues, either mastitis treatment or AMR. This is the issue which we talk even every fortnightly. Even then it will be less, so that awareness, means program. People are aware. People, they know what is the mastitis, what is the AMR, what is the menace of the antibiotic treatment. So we will continue this type of activity, and we will see that our association of mastitis is vibrant with the support of all my good friends. Nilesh is in Jammu, and Dr. JP Sharma ji is Honorable Vice Chancellor. I'm sure that he will be extending full support for this one. And let us see. Jo aapka, what observation you have given, Dr. Sharma, that livestock sector in the rural area of the Jammu, absolutely correct. I tell you, when I was in Jammu, I tried my label-based that processing of the milk must be enhanced, and I brought Amul and all these things in the Jammu to establish the plant, because Jammu was the state where there was no paneer, there was no any milk products during the lean period, during the 3-4 months of the year. But now you can get it throughout the year. Livestock sector is contributing to the agricultural GDP to the tune of 34 to 40%. A state like Haryana, Punjab, their contribution is 39 to 40%, and we are spending only 1% of agricultural GDP on the livestock. If you see, contribution of the dairy sector, you will be surprised to know that dairy sector in the last 40 years, it has never gone in negative, especially in the last 2 decades, never gone negative. It was only 2003 and 4, then the growth rate was approximately 1%. Today, it is contributing 4% in the national GDP in the only dairy sector. So we can imagine that what is the importance of livestock sector, dairy sector in our food and nutritional security. We will continue to contribute in this direction in future also. Thanks to each and everyone once again, and I wish a very safe, healthy stay at home or at institutes to everyone. Thank you very much. Back to you, Nilesh, the organizer. Thank you, Dr. JP Sharma ji, for your presence and motivating the Dr. Nino as well as our participants. Thank you very much. Nilesh,
thank you so much, sir, for your really remarks. Means everybody knows that in India, you have already been worked a lot on antibiotics, on mastitis, and you have organized some small conferences like from INTAS and all things, sir. We have, even though still, sir, we are referring your all details table, which one antibiotic have more penetration in the mammary gland, all. So still we are referring. Sir. Thank you so much, sir. That's okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir, from my side to everyone. So now I would like to transfer to Dr. Sindhu for the vote of thanks. So Dr. Sindhu, please.
Very good evening to all of you. I am here to present a formal vote of thanks. I am very thankful to Professor Nino from Croatia for a wonderful presentation, and that is thought-provoking. I am also very thankful to Professor JP Sharma, the Vice Chancellor, sir, from SCOS Jammu, for being with us all time and for motivating us. I am also thankful to Dr. E.K. Srivastava, sir, who is president of our society and also member of ASRB, for being every time, all time, 24/7 with us. And he is the person who has been working since long for the cause of mastitis. And he is the person who presents each and every data to the higher ups so that we can present ourselves and our society can present a real problem of mastitis to the policymakers. I'm also thankful to Professor Dr. Colonel A.K. Gehlot, sir, former Vice Chancellor Rajwas and currently member governing Advisory Council, Rajasthan, for his all-time guidance and support. I'm also thankful to Dr. S.K. Mehti, sir, Vice President of AOM, and from organizing committees, Dr. Nilesh Sharma, General Secretary, Dr. Pawan Kumar Sharma, Organizing Secretary, and all other office bearers of AOM. Last but not least, I'm very thankful to all of you for joining us in this common cause for the welfare of animals. And we will be in constant touch in further webinars. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Professor Nino, wish you all the best. Good luck. Dr. Sharma ji, namaskar. Thank you very much. I wish कि ये कोरोना खत्म हो, हम लोग मिले जल्दी. ठीक है ना? ठीक है, चलिए. Okay, Professor Nino, bye bye. Dr. Galot
Thank you very much. Bye bye. See you.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir. Bye.
Very
Bye,
soon.
sir. Sir,
Bye.